The security camera footage didn't lie. At 3:47 p.m. on a sunny Thursday afternoon, outside Morgan's Corner Store on Elm Street, a black Mercedes SUV screeched to a halt in a handicapped parking space. Out stepped 23-year-old Victoria Ashford, designer sunglasses perched on her head, phone pressed to her ear, laughing at something only she found amusing. She didn't see the elderly man approaching with his cane. Or perhaps she did, and simply didn't care. 78-year-old Harold Bennett, a decorated Korean War veteran who had served his country with distinction for over 3 decades, was making his way slowly toward the store entrance. His wife had asked him to pick up her prescription. It was a simple errand, the kind that gave him purpose in his retirement years. Victoria's car door swung open with force, striking Harold directly in the hip. He stumbled, his cane clattering to the pavement. Before he could catch his balance, Victoria, still on her phone, still laughing, brushed past him with an irritated huff. "Watch where you're going, old man," she snapped, not bothering to look back. Harold fell hard. The impact fractured his hip and broke his wrist as he tried to brace himself. He lay there on the hot asphalt, calling for help, while Victoria disappeared into the store. Within minutes, witnesses had called 911. Mrs. Chen, who owned the flower shop next door, rushed over with a cushion for Harold's head. Tom Rodriguez, a construction worker on his lunch break, stayed with Harold until the ambulance arrived, fury burning in his eyes as he watched Victoria emerge from the store 15 minutes later, iced coffee in hand, seemingly unbothered by the commotion. "That's her," someone shouted. "She's the one who knocked him down." Victoria glanced at the ambulance, rolled her eyes, and climbed back into her Mercedes. The footage went viral within hours. The local news picked it up by evening. By the next morning, it had spread across social media platforms nationwide. People were outraged, not just by the callousness of the act, but by what they discovered about the perpetrator. Victoria Ashford was the daughter of Ambassador Richard Ashford, a prominent diplomat with connections reaching into the highest levels of government. She had a history of traffic violations, all dismissed. A DUI charge from 2 years ago that mysteriously disappeared. Complaints from service workers, neighbors, and even university professors during her brief college stint, all ignored. She was, as many people put it online, someone who believed herself above the law. Harold Bennett spent 3 days in the hospital. He would need surgery, months of physical therapy, and might never walk without assistance again. The community rallied around him. Fundraisers, visits, flowers, and cards flooded his hospital room. Meanwhile, Victoria posted a photo of herself at a spa resort with the caption, "Taking time for self-care. The world is so stressful lately. Nail polish sparkles." The public outcry intensified. Pressure mounted on the district attorney's office. Finally, charges were filed: aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, and leaving the scene of an accident. The trial was set for 3 weeks later. Outside the courthouse, protesters gathered with signs reading "Justice for Harold" and "Privilege is not a defense." News vans lined the street. The whole city seemed to be watching. But a revelation no one expected was about to change everything in that courtroom. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Every seat in the gallery was filled. People stood against the back wall, pressed shoulder to shoulder. Reporters clutched their notepads. Harold Bennett sat in the front row in a wheelchair, his wife Margaret holding his hand, their faces etched with dignified pain. Judge Catherine Mercer presided, a woman in her late 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun, known throughout the state for her no-nonsense approach and unwavering commitment to fairness. She had served on the bench for 22 years and had seen every type of defendant imaginable. But something about this case had gotten under her skin. The bailiff called for order as the side door opened. Victoria Ashford entered, and a murmur rippled through the crowd. She wore an expensive cream-colored pantsuit, her hair styled in perfect waves, diamond earrings catching the light. Her lawyer, Gerald Hastings, a high-priced defense attorney from New York, walked beside her with practiced confidence. Victoria's expression was one of barely concealed boredom mixed with irritation, as if this entire proceeding was an inconvenient interruption to her life. She didn't glance at Harold Bennett once. Judge Mercer's eyes narrowed slightly, but her voice remained measured. "Please be seated. We are here in the matter of the People versus Victoria Ashford. Ms. Ashford, you stand accused of aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, and leaving the scene of an accident. How do you plead?" Gerald Hastings stood smoothly. "Not guilty, Your Honor. My client maintains her innocence in this matter. What occurred was an unfortunate accident, nothing more." "An accident?" The prosecutor, David Chen, rose to his feet. "Your Honor, the evidence will show this was no accident but a pattern of reckless behavior and callous disregard." "We'll hear the evidence in due course, Mr. Chen," Judge Mercer interrupted. "Please call your first witness." Harold Bennett was wheeled to the witness stand. The bailiff helped him raise his right hand to take the oath. His voice, though weakened by age and injury, remained clear and strong, a voice that had once commanded soldiers, that had spoken words of comfort to dying men on frozen battlefields. "Mr. Bennett," David Chen began gently, "can you tell us in your own words what happened on the afternoon of September 14th? Harold took a breath. "I was going to pick up my wife's medication. I parked in the regular spot. Never use the handicapped ones unless I really need to, you understand. I was making my way to the store entrance when I heard a car pull up fast behind me." He paused, the memory clearly painful. "Next thing I knew, a car door hit me from the side. Knocked me clean off balance. My cane went flying. I tried to catch myself, but—" He held up his casted wrist. "I hit the ground hard. And what happened next? I heard a woman's voice. She said—" Harold's jaw tightened. "Watch where you're going, old man." Then she just walked away. Left me lying there. A sound came from the defense table. A laugh. Soft, but unmistakable. Every head in the courtroom turned. Victoria had her hand partially covering her mouth, but her shoulders were shaking with suppressed amusement. She leaned toward her lawyer and whispered something, then let out another small giggle. The courtroom erupted in shocked whispers. "Order!" Judge Mercer's gavel came down hard. Her face had gone stone cold. "Ms. Ashford, do you find something amusing about this testimony?" Victoria straightened, composing herself with effort. "No, Your Honor. I apologize. This whole situation is so absurd. I barely touched my car door. If he was too frail to handle being in a parking lot, maybe he shouldn't have been out alone." Gasps echoed through the gallery. Gerald Hastings grabbed his client's arm, whispering urgently, but Victoria shook him off. "I mean, really," she continued, her voice taking on a tone of exasperation. "This is being blown completely out of proportion. My father is a United States ambassador. I have work to do, places to be. And I'm being dragged through this circus because some old man can't keep his balance." The outrage in the courtroom was palpable. Margaret Bennett's face crumpled. Harold sat with quiet dignity, his eyes never leaving Victoria's face. Judge Mercer's knuckles were white as she gripped her gavel. "Ms. Ashford, I strongly suggest you show some respect for these proceedings and for—" "Respect?" Victoria laughed again, louder this time. "Your Honor, with all due respect, do you know who my father is? Do you understand the position my family holds? This man is fine. He'll get his medical bills paid. What more does he want?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Judge Mercer stood slowly, her eyes blazing. "Ms. Ashford, you will sit down and remain silent, or I will hold you in contempt." "Do I make myself clear?" For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Victoria's face. She sat, but the smirk remained. Harold Bennett's testimony continued. He described his injuries in detail: the shattered hip socket, the complex surgery required, the fact that doctors had told him he might never walk independently again. He spoke of the pain, yes, but more than that, the humiliation of being treated as invisible, as disposable. "I served this country for 32 years, Harold said quietly. "I led men in combat. I came home and raised a family, paid my taxes, tried to be a good neighbor. And in all that time, I never imagined I'd be treated like garbage on the street. Like I didn't matter." His voice broke slightly. That hurt worse than any broken bone. The courtroom was utterly silent. Victoria examined her nails. Judge Mercer's jaw clenched. "Mr. Bennett, thank you for your service and your testimony. You may step down." As Harold was wheeled back to his seat, Victoria's phone buzzed. She actually reached for it. "Ms. Ashford." Judge Mercer's voice cracked like a whip. "Put that phone away immediately." Victoria sighed dramatically and dropped it back in her purse. The judge took a long breath, clearly struggling to maintain composure. "We will hear from additional witnesses tomorrow. This court is in recess until—" And then someone stood up in the back of the courtroom. The movement was sudden enough that everyone turned to look. A tall man in his early 60s, wearing a police uniform with stars on the shoulders, stepped into the aisle. Chief Richard Ashford, Victoria's father. Judge Mercer's eyes widened slightly. "Chief Ashford, I didn't realize you were present." The police chief's face was ashen, his expression a mixture of shame and barely controlled fury. He looked at his daughter for a long moment, and something passed between them, something that made Victoria's smirk finally, completely disappear. "Your Honor," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "may I approach the bench?" Judge Mercer hesitated for only a moment. "Approach." Chief Richard Ashford walked down the center aisle with measured steps, the kind of bearing that came from 35 years in law enforcement. He had started as a beat cop in Brooklyn and worked his way up through sheer determination and integrity. His uniform was decorated with commendations, his reputation spotless. Until now, perhaps. Every eye in the courtroom followed him. Victoria sat frozen at the defense table, her earlier bravado evaporating. For the first time since the proceedings began, she looked genuinely afraid. At the bench, Judge Mercer spoke quietly. "Chief Ashford, you understand this is highly irregular. Your daughter is the defendant. You shouldn't even be." "I know, Your Honor." His voice was steady but strained. "I've been sitting in the back for the past hour. I came here today not as chief of police, not as Ambassador Ashford's brother, but as a father. I came to support my daughter because that's what fathers do." He paused, his throat working. "I came to support her. But after what I just witnessed, after hearing what she did and how she's conducted herself—" His voice cracked. "Your Honor, may I address the court?" Judge Mercer studied him carefully. The prosecutor started to object, then stopped. Even Gerald Hastings seemed uncertain whether to intervene. "This is unconventional," Judge Mercer said slowly, "but I'll allow it. Please take the stand, Chief Ashford." A murmur ran through the courtroom as Richard Ashford was sworn in. He sat in the witness chair, his hands folded, his eyes finally meeting his daughter's. Victoria's face had gone pale. Judge Mercer spoke gently. "Chief Ashford, you wanted to say something to this court?" He nodded. "Your Honor, members of the court, I need to start with an apology, to Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, to this community, and to everyone who has been affected by my daughter's actions." He took a shaky breath. "I'm the chief of police in this city. I've dedicated my life to upholding the law, to protecting people, to ensuring justice is served fairly and without bias. And yet—" His voice hardened. "I have failed spectacularly in the most important job I ever had, being a father." Victoria made a small sound, almost a whimper. "I made excuses for her," Richard continued. "Every time she got in trouble, every time someone complained, every time she showed that same arrogance and entitlement I just witnessed here today, I made it go away. I told myself I was protecting her, that she was young, that she'd grow out of it." He shook his head bitterly. "I was wrong. I didn't protect her. I enabled her. I taught her that consequences don't apply to people like us. That our name, our connections, our position in society puts us above the law I swore to uphold." Harold Bennett sat perfectly still, watching. "When I saw that video," Richard said, his voice breaking completely now, "when I saw my daughter knock down a 78-year-old veteran and walk away laughing, I felt sick. Not just disappointed. Sick. Because I realized that I created that person. Through my actions, my protection, my failure to teach her right from wrong, I created someone who could hurt an innocent man and feel nothing." Tears were streaming down his face now. "Mr. Bennett, I am so deeply sorry. You served this country with honor. You deserve to live your life with dignity and respect. What my daughter did to you is unforgivable. And what I did, protecting her from consequences all these years, that made this possible." He turned to Judge Mercer. "Your Honor, I came here today ready to do what I've always done, to use my influence, to call in favors, to make this go away. My brother, the ambassador, has already made calls. Our lawyers have strategies. I had a whole plan." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "But I can't do it any more. I won't do it any more. Because if I do, I'm not saving my daughter. I'm destroying her. I'm confirming what she already believes, that she's above the law, that she can hurt people without consequence, that her actions don't matter." Richard Ashford stood up in the witness box, his voice ringing clear and strong despite his tears. "Your Honor, I am here today to tell you that I will not interfere in this case. I will not use my position. I will not make calls or pull strings. I am asking you, I am begging you, to apply the full weight of the law to my daughter, to hold her accountable, to give her the consequences she should have received years ago." The courtroom was absolutely silent. "If you do this," he continued, "it may be the greatest gift I can give her, the chance to finally understand that her actions have meaning, that other people matter, that she is not special in the eyes of justice." He looked at Victoria again, his face full of anguish and love. "I love you, Victoria. I love you more than anything in this world. But I've loved you the wrong way. I've loved you in a way that's made you cruel and thoughtless and dangerous. So now I have to love you the hard way. I have to let you face the consequences of what you've done. I have to let justice run its course, even if it breaks my heart. Especially because it breaks my heart." Victoria was openly crying now, her perfectly applied makeup running in black streaks down her face. Richard stepped down from the witness stand and walked to the defense table. He bent down and kissed his daughter's forehead. "I'm sorry I failed you," he whispered, loud enough for the microphones to catch. "But I won't fail you again." Then he straightened and addressed Gerald Hastings. "You're fired. Victoria will work with a public defender from this point forward. She'll face these charges like any other defendant." Hastings sputtered. "Chief, you can't." "I just did." Richard turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, I'll be in the gallery if you need any further testimony. But I'm here as a citizen now. Nothing more." He walked back up the aisle and sat down next to Harold Bennett. The two men looked at each other. Harold extended his uninjured hand. After a moment, Richard took it. Judge Mercer had to wipe her own eyes before speaking. "This court will take a 30-minute recess. Ms. Ashford, I suggest you use this time to think very carefully about your situation. When we reconvene, We will discuss how you wish to proceed." The gavel fell. When court reconvened, Victoria Ashford was a different person. Her arrogance had shattered completely. She stood before Judge Mercer with red, swollen eyes, her expensive suit rumpled, her hands trembling. Gone was the smirk, the dismissive attitude, the casual cruelty. In its place was something raw and real: fear, shame, and perhaps the first glimmer of actual remorse. "Miss Ashford," Judge Mercer began, her voice measured and firm, "you have heard your father's testimony. You have had time to consult with your new counsel. How do you wish to plead to these charges?" Victoria's voice was barely audible. "Guilty, Your Honor, to all charges." A ripple of surprise moved through the courtroom. "And do you understand that by pleading guilty, you are admitting full responsibility for your actions and waiving your right to a trial?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you have anything you wish to say before sentencing?" Victoria's hands were shaking so badly she had to grip the edge of the table. She looked at Harold Bennett for the first time with actual recognition, seeing him not as an obstacle or an inconvenience, but as a human being she had harmed. "Mr. Bennett," she began, her voice cracking, I don't know how to apologize for what I did to you. Sorry feels completely inadequate. I hurt you. I humiliated you. I treated you like you were invisible, like you didn't matter. And the worst part is—" She swallowed hard. "The worst part is that's exactly how I've been treating people my entire life." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I've spent 23 years believing I was special, that rules didn't apply to me, that I could do whatever I wanted without consequences. My father's right. He protected me from ever learning any different. But that's not an excuse. I made the choice to be cruel. I made the choice to walk away from you when you were hurt and needed help." She wiped her eyes with shaking hands. "You're a veteran. You served this country. And I've never done anything meaningful with my life. I've just taken and taken, thinking I deserved it all. I don't even know who I am without my family name and money and connections. I've never had to find out." Victoria turned to Judge Mercer. "Your Honor, whatever sentence you give me, I deserve it. I deserve worse. I just want you to know that I heard what my father said, and he was right about everything. I need to face consequences. I need to understand that my actions have meaning and that other people's lives matter. Because right now, I don't think I really understand that at all. Not really. Not in a way that changes how I behave." She sat down heavily, covering her face with her hands. Judge Mercer let the silence stretch for a long moment before speaking. "Victoria Ashford, I have been a judge for 22 years. In that time, I have seen thousands of defendants stand where you're standing now. I've seen every type of criminal, every level of remorse or lack thereof, every kind of excuse and justification imaginable." The judge's voice was strong, clear, carrying throughout the silent courtroom. "What I witnessed from you earlier today, the laughing, the dismissiveness, the utter lack of empathy, represents everything that is wrong with a system that treats people differently based on wealth, status, and connections. You are a living example of what happens when privilege goes unchecked, when consequences are consistently avoided, when someone is taught that their comfort matters more than another person's dignity." Victoria kept her head bowed. "However," Judge Mercer continued, "I also witnessed something today I see far less often, a father brave enough to stop protecting his child from the truth. Chief Ashford's testimony was one of the most difficult and courageous things I have seen in this courtroom. He chose justice over comfort, truth over convenience, his daughter's soul over her freedom." She looked directly at Victoria. "The question now is whether you have the courage to make the same choice. Whether you're willing to do the hard work of becoming a person worthy of your father's sacrifice and Mr. Bennett's eventual forgiveness." Judge Mercer picked up her gavel. "Victoria Ashford, you are hereby sentenced as follows: 18 months in county jail, with the possibility of reduced time for good behavior and program participation. Following your release, you will serve 3 years of probation, during which time you will complete 500 hours of community service specifically working with elderly and disabled veterans. Victoria's shoulders shook with quiet sobs. Additionally, the judge continued, you will pay full restitution for Mr. Bennett's medical expenses, lost wages, and pain and suffering, in an amount to be determined by the court. You will attend mandatory counseling focused on empathy development and accountability. And you will write a formal letter of apology to Mr. Bennett, not a legal document, but a genuine, personal reflection on your actions and their impact. Judge Mercer's voice softened slightly. Ms. Ashford, this sentence is not designed to destroy you. It is designed to rebuild you. You have the opportunity to emerge from this as a better person, more compassionate, more humble, more aware of your place in a community of human beings who all deserve respect and dignity. Whether you take that opportunity is entirely up to you. The gavel fell. Court is adjourned. But before the bailiffs could approach, Harold Bennett raised his hand. Your Honor, may I say something? Judge Mercer nodded. Please. Harold was wheeled forward. He looked at Victoria, really looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes wasn't hatred or vindictiveness. It was something far more powerful. Young lady, he said quietly, what you did to me hurt. Not just my body, but my pride, my sense of security in the world. For a while there, I was pretty angry. He paused. But I've lived a long time. Long enough to know that hate and bitterness are heavy things to carry. And long enough to recognize pain when I see it, not just in your face right now, but in your father's face. In your whole life, probably. Harold's weathered hand gripped the arm of his wheelchair. I'm not saying what you did was okay. It wasn't. And I'm not saying the consequences aren't deserved. They are. But I am saying that I believe people can change. I've seen it happen. Men who were enemies becoming friends, boys becoming men, broken people putting themselves back together. His voice grew stronger. So I forgive you, Victoria. Not because you've earned it, but because holding on to anger would only hurt me more. And I genuinely hope, that when you get out of jail, you'll have learned something. That you'll treat people better. That you'll use whatever advantages you were born with to help others instead of hurting them. Tears were streaming down Victoria's face. Thank you, she whispered. I don't deserve. You're right, Harold interrupted gently. You don't. That's what makes it grace. As the bailiffs led Victoria away, she looked back one more time at her father. Richard Ashford stood with his hand over his heart, his face wet with tears, watching his daughter face the consequences of her actions. I love you, he mouthed. I love you too, she mouthed back. And then she was gone. Epilogue. 8 months later. The morning sun filtered through the windows of the Veterans Community Center on Maple Street. The smell of fresh coffee and baking filled the air as volunteers prepared for the weekly breakfast service. Victoria Ashford stood at the counter, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing jeans and a volunteer T-shirt. No designer clothes. No jewelry. No makeup beyond some basic mascara. She looked younger without all the armor. And tired. Prison had left its marks in the shadows under her eyes, the way she held herself more carefully, more aware of space and boundaries. But there was something else, too. Something in the way she smiled at the elderly veterans as they came through the line, the way she listened when they spoke, really listened. The way she remembered their names and asked about their families. "Good morning, Mr. Patterson," she said warmly to a man with a walker. "Did your grandson's baseball team win their game?" The old man's face lit up. "They did. 3-2, bottom of the 9th. I wish you could have seen it." "Maybe I can come to the next one," Victoria said. "When is it?" As she served food, cleaned tables, and helped veterans who struggled with mobility, Harold Bennett watched from across the room. He came to the center twice a week now, partially for the community, partially to keep an eye on the young woman who had once left him broken on the pavement. Margaret, his wife, brought him a cup of coffee. "She's different," Margaret observed. "Yes," Harold agreed. "She is." The physical therapy had worked better than expected. Harold could walk short distances with a cane now, though the wheelchair was still necessary for longer outings. His wrist had healed completely. The physical scars were fading. The other scars, the ones that came from being treated as invisible, those had taken longer. But watching Victoria work with humility and genuine care, he felt them healing too. Richard Ashford arrived just after 9, as he did every Saturday. He'd taken a leave of absence from his position as police chief, not because he was forced to, but because he needed to. Needed to figure out what kind of man he wanted to be, what kind of father. He'd started volunteering at the center too. Father and daughter worked side by side in comfortable silence, washing dishes, refilling coffee, laughing at the veterans' stories. There was an ease between them now that hadn't existed before, born from honesty, from consequences, from the hard work of rebuilding trust. During a quiet moment, Victoria found herself at the same table as Harold. "How are you doing?" he asked. "It's hard," she admitted. "Prison was. It was the hardest thing I've ever experienced. I was scared every day. I had to learn how to be just another person, not special, not protected. I had to learn what it feels like when people have power over you and you have absolutely no control." She looked down at her hands. "I deserved every second of it, and I needed every second of it, because I really didn't understand. Not before. And now I understand that every person I meet is someone's whole world. They matter just as much as I do. Their time, their dignity, their safety, it's all just as important as mine." She smiled sadly. "It seems like such an obvious thing. But I really didn't know it. Not in my bones. Not in a way that changed how I acted." Harold nodded. "That's wisdom, young lady. Hard-earned, but real." "I still have 10 months left on my sentence," Victoria said. "Then 3 years of probation and all those community service hours. But—" She looked around the room at the veterans sharing stories and laughter. "I think I might keep coming here even after my hours are done. If that's okay." "I think," Harold said with a gentle smile, "that would be just fine." Richard Ashford joined them, carrying 3 cups of fresh coffee. He set them down and sat beside his daughter. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, I know you still have a long road ahead. I know you'll make mistakes. But you're trying. You're doing the work. You're becoming the person I always hoped you'd be, but didn't know how to help you become." He put his arm around her shoulders. "I'm proud of you. And I love you. I love you too." They sat together in the busy center, 3 people whose lives had collided in tragedy and were being rebuilt in grace, a veteran learning to walk again, a father learning to love better, and a young woman learning what it meant to be truly human. Outside, the morning sun climbed higher, and the city moved forward, one day at a time, toward whatever came next. But in this moment, in this place, there was something rare and precious. Justice that had led to healing, consequences that had led to transformation, and accountability that had opened the door to redemption. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a true one. And sometimes that's enough.